Here we're dealt ace jack offsuit in the hijack and open to 15. We're gonna get this hand dealt to us a lot in this video, so prepare yourself now. The big blind is our only customer. We're heads up. The flop comes ace jack 6 with 2 hearts. Thank you very much for top 2, Mr. Dealer. The big blind checks, I bet 20. Big blind calls, the turn is the queen of spades. The big blind checks, this time I bet 40. He calls again, the river is the king of diamonds. There are 4 to the straight out there. It's confirmed, the dealer hates us. Big blind leads out for 100. This is not an easy decision for me. The opponent is almost never gonna have a set here or a 2-pair hand that's better than mine. Still, there are plenty of combos he could have containing a 10 to have me beat. In a vacuum, this might be a call. I don't think that this particular player's bluffing though. I reluctantly let it go, and we'll never know if it was correct. I wish he'd show, but he didn't, so we're off to a rough start in Arena. On to the next hand. We pick up ace jack offsuit in the big blind, the cutoff limps in, the small blind, who appears to be a pro, raises to 25. It's kind of a strange spot for us. I think the small blind could be doing this with a relatively wide range. I'm probably ahead. The problem is that if I call, I'll almost definitely get a call from the limper behind me. I'll be second to act in a 3-way pot. I elect to 3-bet to 80. This gives me the opportunity to win the hand pre-flop, or if I do get called, I'll most likely be playing a bigger pot heads up in position. Cutoff folds, the small blind calls, the flop comes ace 7 deuce, all diamonds, the small blind checks. I bet 80, the small blind calls, the turn is an offsuit 9, the small blind checks again. I don't want this pot to get too crazy, I check back. The river is another 7, the small blind checks for a 3rd time. Part of me wants to check back, but I believe I'm ahead. I'm just not sure what I can get called by that's worse. There's also some chance my opponent could have a hand like ace queen and have me beat. I put out a tiny bet of 70. This should get a call from all worse aces and even some underpairs. The player calls, I turn over ace jack, and it's a winner. No, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. We get ace jack again. This time of the suited variety. The under the gun player opens at 20. I expect him to have a tight range from this position, so I'm not going to 3-bet. I call from the cutoff. The small blind calls, the big blind calls as well. 4 of us see the flop. We're in position. It comes queen 10-5, all clubs. We flop the nuts in a multi-way hand. The opponents check to us. There are a few good reasons to bet. Number 1 is that we have a great hand and we want to get as much money in as we can. There are multiple opponents, so someone might be able to call us. The only issue is that all the high clubs are accounted for except for the king. If I bet into 3 other people, I'm worried it might look too strong. No one's going to have anything they'd feel comfortable calling with. I check for deception and to give someone either a chance to improve or possibly they'll take a shot at bluffing the turn. I don't really like this check, but in the heat of battle, sometimes I do things I end up not liking when I think about them later. Dealer puts out the 4 of hearts on the turn. The opponents once again check. Now I bet 50, hoping it's going to look like I'm trying to steal it after everyone checked for a second time. No one has anything. The players all fold. We win a small one. So of course I pick up ace jack again. I'm in the big blind. Mr. Bill's in the game. He's a poker vlogger as well. He opens a 20 from under the gun. Under the gun plus 2 calls. Player in middle position calls. I call to close the action. The flop comes jack 8-6 with 2 diamonds. We've got top with a nut flush draw. I check and it ends up checking through. The turn is another 8. I bet 45. Mr. Bill calls. The other players fold. We're heads up and the river is another jack. We boat up. It's a good card, but it could be tough for me to get paid here. I bet 50. Mr. Bill folds, saying that he only had a 6. Guess what? We're dealt ace jack again. I know. I'm tired of it too. We're on the button. Hijack limps in. I raise to 20. The big blind calls for the short stack. The hijack also calls. 3 of us see the flop. It's jack 7-5 with 2 spades. Again, we've got top with a nut flush draw. Both players check. I bet 25. Big blind lets his hand go. The hijack calls. We're heads up, and the turn is the 10 of spades, giving me the ace high flush. The hijack checks. I bet 45. The hijack calls again, and the river is another 10. The hijack now leads for 75. He doesn't seem like the type of guy that makes boats all that often, so I put in the raise, making it 250 total. He decides he doesn't want to donate to the Bradley Owen charity for lanky white guys. He lays down his hand. We still get 3 streets of value and win a medium-sized pot. Finally, we pick up a hand that's not ace jack. We get into a super interesting one with pocket aces under the gun. I open to 15. Mr. Bill calls from under the gun plus 1, under the gun plus 2, 3 bets to 60. His name's Chris. He's a YouTube viewer and a good player. Folds back to me. Chris's 3-bet signifies an extremely strong hand since I myself am going to have a very narrow opening range from under the gun, and he thinks he's got a better one. He won't be bluffing all that often in this spot. Been doing a lot of studying lately on upswing. What I find extremely helpful is the pre-flop range charts. They have them for almost every scenario pre-flop. This is what my under the gun, raised first in range should look like according to upswing. Mainly consists of very strong hands. Now let's take a look at how narrow a 3-bet range should look like from under the gun +2 versus an under the gun open. Based on this chart, shouldn't even be 3-betting me with ace-king offsuit. It should only be with aces, kings, ace-king suited, sometimes queens, and then king-jack suited and ace-10 suited as bluffs. Once I face this 3-bet, I'm hoping he'll have something he'll be willing to get it in with pre-flop. I put in a 4-bet to 225. Let's go back to the chart and see what hands I should be 4-betting with. As you might imagine, it's almost nothing. The only automatic one is aces. Even with ace-king and pocket kings, I can theoretically just flat. Mr. Bill folds his hand, which is probably a good idea, and Chris flats my 4-bet. If Chris is playing how he should be, he's a good player, so I imagine he is. He's basically only going to have ace-king suited, pocket kings, and at the very bottom of his range will be pocket queens, but sometimes he won't be 3-betting me with that hand, and if he does, he could even potentially fold it since my 4-bet range in this exact scenario should only consist of hands that he's basically flipping with or have him crushed. The flop comes king 10-6 with 2 clubs. This is a pretty terrible flop for us since kings are a very, very likely hand that our opponent could have. There are 3 possible combinations of it, only 2 combinations of ace-king suited, and 6 combinations of pocket queens, which may not be able to get value from even if he does have it. I don't really know what to do. I end up checking. He checks back. The turn is another king. This reduces the amount of pocket king combinations from 3 down to 1. The 2 possible combinations of ace-king suited had now overtaken us, so if he played his hand correctly pre-flop, the exact same number of combos that were beating us on the flop are still beating us, and this ends up being kind of a neutral card, except if we throw in queens in the opponent's pre-flop range, that ends up being a substantial percentage of his holdings. 6 out of 9 potential hands that we're up against will be pocket queens. I put out a small bet of 150. Queens might even want to fold since every hand that I should be 4-betting with has queens in horrible shape. The player ends up flatting. This is not a situation I enjoy being in because he could certainly be doing this with pocket kings and ace-king still. The river is another 6. I check. I might have to give up to any bet. I'm kind of at the bottom of my range. I'm thrilled that it checks back. I turn over the aces. The opponent does have queens. We win a big pot, holding our breath the entire time. We're up over 650, and now we can breathe again. I'm dealt 6-4 suited in the small blind. Andrew raises to 15 on the button. I call. The big blind also calls. The flop comes king 7-3 with 2 clubs. We all check. The turn is a 4. I make bottom pair, and I've got a gut shot. That's when I start recording.
I got the best hand, guys. Check. Boom. Horse. Right.
You weren't lying.
Right.
Yeah.
Beat him. Got him. This guy raised pre-pop.
The game isn't great, so shortly after, I rack up, booking a solid win.